We're about to begin a brand new love journey. Please comment on where you're watching from so we can see that our Soul Stories family is all around the world. Amelia bit her lip until it bled, her hand gripping the hospital bed rail so tightly her knuckles turned white. Cold sweat trickled down her temples, mixing with the tears she had tried to hold back through all the months of loneliness. But nothing was more painful than the truth staring back at her. She was about to give birth to a child rejected by the very man who had once sworn to love her forever. "Hang in there, Amelia. We're almost there," the nurse urged, her voice rushed yet gentle. The screech of the metal wheels echoed down the hallway, heightening the tension in the air. The double doors swung open with a hiss of pressurized air. The blinding white light of the delivery room stabbed into Amelia's eyes, making her dizzy. She grimaced, her breath shallow, clinging to one desperate wish: to see her son born safely. "Put the patient in position. Check the fetal heartbeat immediately," a doctor's voice rang out from the far end of the room, deep and commanding. Amelia forced her eyes open, trying to steady herself, and her heart nearly stopped. Standing there in a pristine white coat was the man she had once loved with every fiber of her being, the very same man who had shattered her life, Dr. Gabriel Morrison. His name was embroidered across his chest in stark blue. The mask dangled loosely around his neck, revealing the face that made her tremble, the face that once whispered sweet vows on their wedding night, but also the same face that had delivered the cruel verdict. "Get rid of it." "No, no, it can't be," Amelia gasped, shaking her head in despair. Gabriel froze, his eyes locking onto hers, shock mingling with pain. "Amelia, get out! Please, get him out of here," Amelia screamed, her voice hoarse from contractions. "I can't. I won't let him touch me." The nurses exchanged uneasy glances. One whispered, "Doctor, should we call Dr. Stevens?" "Dr. Stevens is in emergency surgery. There's no time," Gabriel cut in, his eyes still fixed on Amelia. Amelia broke down, tears streaming down her sweat-drenched face. It felt as though her world was collapsing all over again. The physical agony was unbearable, but worse was the humiliation that the man who had abandoned her now held her child's life in his hands. Gabriel stepped closer, stopping just a few feet away. For a fleeting moment, the cold mask of a doctor slipped, revealing a rare flicker of sorrow in his eyes. His voice was low, almost pleading. "Amelia, I know you hate me, and I deserve it, but right now a life is at stake. I swear on my honor as a doctor, I will not let you or the baby be in danger." Another contraction hit, so fierce that Amelia cried out, her body curling in pain. Through the torment, she heard the monitor beeping frantically, the rapid heartbeat of her child, like the tolling of a funeral bell. "Fetal heartbeat is at 180, doctor," a nurse shouted in panic. Gritting her teeth, eyes red with tears, Amelia glared at Gabriel. In that gaze burned hatred, anguish, remnants of love, and the terror of losing her child all tangled together. 7 months earlier, the morning sun poured into a luxury apartment in Lincoln Park, reflecting off spotless white walls and floor-to-ceiling windows. Amelia Carter stood in the bathroom, her trembling hand clutching a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines appeared, bold and unmistakable. She stared at them as if they were a miracle. Her heart raced, chest swelling with indescribable joy. For months she had longed for this moment, dreaming of telling Gabriel he was going to be a father. A little family filled with children's laughter that had been their shared dream. "Amelia," Gabriel's voice called from the living room. "Are you ready yet? I have to head to the hospital." "Just a minute." She gripped the test tighter, inhaling deeply for courage. The door opened and she stepped into the living room. Gabriel was standing before the mirror, carefully adjusting his navy tie. His crisp white shirt was immaculate, his doctor's coat draped neatly over the sofa. In the morning light, he looked like the very embodiment of success, a promising OBGYN, respected by colleagues, admired by patients. "Gabriel," Amelia whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. He turned, flashing her a distracted smile. "What is it?" Amelia held up the test, her eyes shining. "I have good news. We're going to have a baby." The smile on Gabriel's lips vanished instantly, replaced by a heavy frown. He stared at the 2 pink lines as if they spelled disaster. "What?" he snapped, striding over to snatch the test from her hand. That's impossible. It's true, Gabriel. I tested 3 times. Amelia bit her lip, desperate to hold on to her joy. This is a miracle. It's our child. But instead of embracing her, his gaze turned ice cold. He slammed the test onto the table, took a deep breath, and shook his head. No, Amelia. Not now. I'm not ready. She froze. Not ready? Gabriel, we've been married for 2 years. You told me you wanted a family. I do, but not now, he cut her off, his voice rising. Do you have any idea what I sacrificed to earn my position at the hospital? All the plans, all the years. A child will ruin everything. Don't you understand? Amelia staggered back, her heart tightening. What are you saying? This isn't a burden. This is a life. Gabriel averted his eyes, his fists clenched. I can't be a father right now. You need to take care of it. The words struck like a knife. Amelia's eyes widened, disbelief flooding her. Take care of it? She whispered, choked with tears. You're telling me to get rid of our baby. Don't call it a baby, Gabriel muttered, voice heavy, eyes fixed on the floor. It's a mistake, an accident. Amelia reeled as though the ground had crumbled beneath her. The sweet memories, the vows of forever, all vanished in an instant. You truly believe that? Her voice shook. This child is part of you, part of us. At last Gabriel lifted his head, fear flashing beneath his hardened stare. I don't want to hear any more. Do what has to be done. I'll cover the expenses. We'll pretend this never happened. The room fell deathly silent, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. Amelia looked at him, the man who had once been her whole world, and realized the brutal truth. He was no longer on her side. Tears burned her cheeks. She turned away, unwilling to let him see her break. Quietly, she pulled out a suitcase. One by one, she packed clothes, books, keepsakes, her heart shattering piece by piece. Gabriel stood in the doorway like a statue. He didn't stop her. Not a single apology, not even a touch of her hand. Only the growing void between them, swallowing everything they once had. You chose your career, Amelia whispered as she closed her suitcase. And I choose our child. The suitcase wheels rattled against the hardwood floor, echoing through the apartment. When the door shut behind her, Amelia knew she wasn't just leaving a place, she was leaving a marriage. A week later, Amelia returned to Cedar Falls, the small Iowa town where she had grown up with her Aunt Nina. Her aunt's modest wooden house sat in a quiet neighborhood, its porch scented with wisteria and cinnamon. Compared to the sleek Chicago apartment, this place was humble and cramped, but it radiated the warmth Amelia had lost. Aunt Nina embraced her, frail arms surprisingly steady. My poor girl, I know everything. Don't worry, you'll never be alone. Amelia buried her face in her aunt's shoulder, sobbing like a child. For months, she had clung to the hope that Gabriel would change, that he would regret his words and run back to her. But now, standing in her aunt's sunlit kitchen, listening to birds sing in the garden, she knew she had only one path left, to become a mother, even if it meant being alone. In the days that followed, Amelia attended regular prenatal checkups at the town's small clinic. The elderly doctor congratulated her, saying the baby was healthy. The first time she heard her child's heartbeat, Amelia broke down in tears, her hand on her belly as she whispered, My child, I will never abandon you. Even if the whole world turns its back, I'll be here. At night, lying on her old wooden bed, Amelia listened to crickets outside. She stroked her growing belly, reminding herself to stay strong. Her MBA dreams and big city career goals were now just memories. Instead, she had found a new reason to live, the little life growing inside her. Each morning, she helped her aunt bake bread and tidy the house. Though her heart still bore deep scars, it slowly began to mend with the healing power of maternal love. To the people of Cedar Falls, Amelia seemed like a brave young woman, though they never knew the whole truth. To herself, it was the hardest battle of her life. But for the first time in years, she felt she was on the right path, no longer dependent, no longer waiting, but deciding her future on her own. From her small bedroom window, Amelia looked out at a garden full of wildflowers. She placed her hand on her belly, smiling through tears. My child, from now on, it's just you and me. I promise to raise you well, to give you a home filled with love. I don't need anyone's approval, nor anyone's pity. We will make it because you are my miracle. And with that silent vow, Amelia stepped into a new journey, the journey of a single mother, carrying both sorrow and pride in her heart. Summer in Cedar Falls carried a serenity Chicago had never known. The small cobblestone road leading to Aunt Nana's house was shaded by maple trees, with clusters of wisteria cascading from the wooden porch. The modest two-story house, its cream paint faded by the years, radiated warmth and a sense of familiarity. Amelia entered it like a traveler returning after a long, stormy journey. Aunt Nina, frail in figure but kind-eyed, opened her arms wide and embraced her. My dear girl, here, you don't have to be strong all the time. From now on, you can breathe. Those words broke Amelia open. She cried as she had never cried before. In those final days in Chicago, she had packed in silence, swallowing her humiliation. But here, in her aunt's arms, she could finally let the tears wash away a part of her burden. In the days that followed, Amelia slowly grew accustomed to the slower rhythm of life in the small town. Each morning, she helped her aunt bake bread, set out apple pies on the table, and then sat on the porch breathing in the scent of wild daisies carried on the breeze. Compared to the rushed breakfasts of coffee and emails in Chicago, this life felt like it belonged to another world. But reality was not easy. Amelia tried to find work to support herself, determined not to be a burden. She knocked on the doors of grocery stores, applied at a small cafe, and even submitted a form to the town library. Yet her growing belly made shop owners hesitate. Sorry, we need someone who can lift heavy boxes. Are you sure you can handle night shifts in your condition? Though politely phrased, the words were still rejections. Amelia forced a smile, but as she walked away, her heart grew heavy. Each time she returned along the familiar cobblestone path, she felt small and out of place, as though the world had no room for single mothers. Aunt Nana never scolded her. She cooked nutritious meals, chicken soup, freshly squeezed orange juice, always encouraging her. Don't worry, Amelia. I once raised your mother through hardship. You'll be just fine. But Amelia couldn't quite shake her guilt. She had once been a promising young woman, a bright marketing coordinator poised to pursue an international MBA program. Now she was just a pregnant woman, sitting in a small kitchen, relying on her aunt's savings. When night fell, shadows filled the little upstairs room, and loneliness returned. Amelia often sat by the window, hands stroking her belly, staring out at the flower garden glowing under the moonlight. There were nights she clutched her pillow and cried. She imagined Gabriel in Chicago, perhaps in the hospital's on-call room, focused on the births of other women's children. He, a skilled obstetrician, had rejected his own child. The thought stabbed so sharply she could hardly breathe. Gabriel, why can't you love our baby? She whispered into the darkness, knowing no answer would ever come. Her tears soaked the pillow, mingling with stifled sobs. Doubts gnawed at her. Was she strong enough to raise a child? Would the baby suffer from growing up without a father? Could she provide a future for the two of them? And then amid the haunting questions, a miracle happened. One restless night, Amelia felt something unusual, a flutter in her belly, like a tiny butterfly brushing from within. She held her breath, pressing her hand against her stomach. A faint kick, then another. Her heart burst wide open. Tears flowed again, but this time from joy. My baby, did you just say hello to me? She whispered, smiling through trembling lips. Those small movements became her guiding light in the dark days. Whenever fear crept in, Amelia laid her hand on her stomach and felt life stirring inside. The baby hadn't rejected her, hadn't turned away. On the contrary, the child was present in every breath, every heartbeat, reminding her she was never truly alone. Amelia began keeping a pregnancy journal. In a small notebook, she wrote simple lines. Today you kicked for the first time. I laughed and cried at the same time. You make me believe I still have a reason to go on. I promise to give you a home filled with love, even if we lack a father. Each page, each word was a silent vow binding her to her child. As her belly grew, Amelia began to smile when she looked in the mirror each morning. She was no longer the trim young woman in office dresses. She was a mother, her eyes glowing with a new light. Aunt Nana often placed a hand on Amelia's stomach, her eyes moist. My dear, children are always God's gift. Never think of this child as a burden. Amelia nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Yes. The baby was no accident, no mistake. The child was proof of love, even if that love had been betrayed. The baby was the miracle she had to protect at all costs. Gradually, the sting of abandonment gave way to determination. Amelia began making plans, saving money, enrolling in motherhood classes, and reading parenting books. At every checkup, hearing her baby's steady heartbeat through the ultrasound made her feel as though the universe itself stood with her. On the bedroom wall, she hung a sonogram photo. Gazing at the blurry little face, Amelia saw her entire future. "My child," she whispered, "I won't let anyone hurt you. Not even your father." The small house in Cedar Falls became the witness to Amelia's days filled with both tears and hope. She had lost her husband, lost her career, but in exchange she discovered a new strength, the sacred power of motherhood. And from that moment on, Amelia's journey was no longer just about survival, but about preparing to welcome the little soul who would change her world forever. The screech of metal wheels echoed through the cold, sterile hallway. The gurney rolled swiftly, fluorescent lights flickering overhead, casting sharp beams of white across Amelia's pale face. She gripped the bed rail so hard her knuckles turned white, her body convulsing with every wave of pain. "Stay with me, Amelia." Deep breaths, slow breaths, Nurse Linda encouraged, her voice gentle but laced with worry. Amelia nodded faintly, but her throat was tight with fear. The terror inside her outweighed the physical agony. For 9 long months, she had imagined this moment, the moment her son would let out his first cry. But never had she pictured that, at the edge of life and death, fate would place her face to face with the man she hated most. The delivery room doors burst open with a hiss of compressed air. A flood of blinding white light forced Amelia to squint. When her eyes adjusted and she saw the doctor standing in the middle of the room, her heart stopped. Dr. Gabriel Morrison. The mask hung loosely beneath his chin, his familiar face in full view. On his white coat, embroidered in stark blue, were the words, "Obstetrics and Gynecology." Amelia exhaled sharply, eyes wide with horror. "No, no, it can't be." Gabriel froze too, his dark eyes locking onto hers, trembling in that instant. "Amelia." But the pain in Amelia's chest erupted into a storm of panic. She thrashed, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Get him out. I don't want him here. Call another doctor, please." Nurse Linda looked from Gabriel to the patient. "Doctor, maybe we should call Dr. Stevens." Gabriel shook his head, his voice tight with strain. "Dr. Stevens is in emergency surgery. The other doctors are occupied. There's no time." "No!" Amelia screamed, her cry breaking into sobs. "I won't let him touch me. He has no right." Another brutal contraction tore through her. Amelia arched in agony, sweat pouring off her, both hands clawing at the sheets. The monitor beeped wildly, urgent and rapid. Linda glanced at the screen in alarm. "Fetal heartbeat is up to 180. The door flew open again. A tall man with neatly combed graying hair and eyes cold as steel entered. Dr. Harrison, the hospital director. "Dr. Morrison," he said, his voice sharp with authority, "I've been informed you have a personal relationship with this patient. You know that is a severe breach of medical ethics." Amelia turned toward him, sobbing. "Yes, get another doctor. I don't want him here." Harrison gave a curt nod, his tone icy. "By protocol, you are to step away from this case immediately." Gabriel stepped forward, placing himself between the bed and the director, his eyes blazing. "Sir, I won't deny it. She was my wife, but right now she's a patient in critical condition. There is no one else to take over. Any delay could cost both mother and child their lives." "Rules are rules," Harrison replied coldly. Amelia, writhing in agony, let out a hoarse scream. "I'm not some object for you to pass around. Do you even know how much pain I'm in? Do you realize my baby is about to be born? Your rules won't decide whether we live or die." The room fell silent. Only the monitor's frantic beeps filled the air like a battle drum. In that moment, Amelia shone with fierce strength, her tear-streaked eyes blazing, determined to protect her son. Gabriel looked at her, his chest tightening. That was the Amelia he had once loved, the woman who never surrendered. The beeping quickened, louder, more urgent. Linda shouted, panicked. "Fetal heartbeat is 200. We can't wait any longer." Amelia sobbed, her entire body trembling. "My baby, my baby." Gabriel didn't hesitate. He spun toward Harrison, his voice like steel. "I'm performing an emergency C-section. If you must, fire me afterward. But right now, I will not walk away." Harrison ground his teeth. "You will be held accountable." Gabriel cut him off, each word ringing like a vow. "Then hold me accountable, but I will save my son." The declaration fell into silence. Amelia stared at him through blurred tears, torn between hate and reluctant trust. But on the threshold of life and death, she had no other choice. Another contraction crushed her, forcing a scream from her throat. On the screen, the fetal heart rate spiked into chaos, red alarms flashing. "Prepare for emergency surgery," Gabriel ordered, voice firm and unshaken. Linda and the nurses moved instantly, lights flaring overhead, flooding the room with sterile brightness. Amelia squeezed her eyes shut, her trembling hand clutching the bed rail, whispering in despair, "Dear God, please save my baby." Gabriel stood ready, gloved hands steady, eyes resolute. Against hatred, against rules, against the risk of losing everything, he had only one purpose left: to bring his son safely into the world. The rapid beeping of the fetal heart monitor echoed through the delivery room, each sound pounding against Amelia's chest like a hammer. She lay on the table, drenched in sweat, her trembling hands clutching the sheet. Every contraction was a razor's edge slicing through her body, stealing her breath. Linda bent close to her ear, whispering urgently, "Amelia, breathe in, breathe out, stay calm. Your baby needs you." But how could she stay calm when, just beyond the green drape, the one in charge of her labor was Gabriel Morrison, the man who had abandoned her, the man who had called their child an accident? Harrison stood at the foot of the operating table, arms crossed, his gaze cold as a blade. "Dr. Morrison, I repeat, you are forbidden from participating in this case. This is final." Gabriel did not blink. His dark eyes blazed with a rare, unyielding fire. "If you want, fire me when this is over. But I will not abandon this patient, and I will not abandon my son." His words shot through the air, stunning the entire team. Amelia heard every syllable, her heart twisting. He had just acknowledged that this child was his son. Harrison clenched his jaw, but the monitor's frantic beeping made him hesitate. Linda reported, "Fetal heartbeat is at 200, Director. If we don't operate now, it's dangerous." Amelia burst into tears, choking on her sobs. "Please, please save my baby." Harrison looked at the screen, then at Amelia, and finally turned away, his voice heavy. "Fine. Morrison, you take full responsibility. May God help you." Amelia trembled, her heart racing. Gabriel leaned down, his eyes locking on hers, his voice low but firm. "Amelia, I need you to trust me this time. Just this once. I promise I'll bring your baby to you safely." She turned her face away, crying hard. Images flooded back her lonely prenatal visits, holding her belly in that little room in Cedar Falls, burying her face in her pillow to muffle her sobs. For 6 months, she had never needed him, never believed she could. But now her son hovered at the edge of life and death. Her voice cracked, almost a shout. "If anything happens to my baby, I will hate you for the rest of my life." Gabriel gave a small nod, pain flickering in his eyes, but also a fierce light of resolve. "I know." The surgical light snapped on, glaring and cold as steel. The team moved swiftly around the table. Scalpel, clamps, gauze, all laid out neatly on the stainless steel tray. Amelia shuddered as the nurse injected the spinal anesthetic. The numbness spread slowly down her lower body, replacing agony with a heavy, powerless sensation. She felt herself falling into a void, helpless, stripped of control. Gabriel stood at the head of the table, his eyes never leaving her. "You won't feel pain anymore, just pressure. Look at me if you get scared." Amelia turned away, tears spilling from her eyes. "I don't want to look at you." Gabriel was silent for a moment, then rested his hand on the green drape, his voice soft as a vow. "Then look at our child. because everything I'm doing now is for our son. Scalpel, Gabriel ordered. Metal clinked against metal. Amelia squeezed her eyes shut, her heart racing. She knew the defining moment had arrived. The sound of the blade cutting through flesh was chilling, but Amelia felt no pain, only a strange, icy pressure and fear spreading through her body. Careful with the muscle layer. Suction. Hold the uterus, Gabriel instructed crisply, his voice steady as steel. Every order, every movement was so precise that the team found itself placing its trust entirely in him. Amelia sobbed, tears flowing, lips moving in a trembling whisper. My baby, please live, please. In that tense moment, memories flooded her the morning of the pregnancy test. Gabriel's cold eyes, the word accident like a knife in her heart. Now he was trying to save the baby, but could that ever erase what he had done? She shook, terrified and angry, clinging to the edge of the table. Gabriel bent his head, his voice barely above a whisper meant only for her. I'm sorry, Amelia. Whether you forgive me or not, I will not lose our child again. The monitor's beeping grew even more urgent. Linda cried out, fetal heartbeat dropping fast. We have to move quicker. Gabriel clenched his jaw. Lift the uterus. Widen the incision. The room felt strung like a bowstring about to snap. Amelia clutched Linda's hand, trembling violently. My baby, please. Harrison stood back, his expression complicated. He said nothing more, just watched in silence as Gabriel fought against time. Gabriel looked up, a flash of fierce determination in his eyes. He spoke loud enough for all to hear, like a declaration. Fire me if you must, but right now I will save my son. The words rang out, cutting through the icy air of the operating room. Everything fell silent. Only the blare of the monitor and Gabriel's decisive hands guided the surgery to its breaking point. Amelia shut her eyes, tears streaming like rain. In that moment, she knew she had no choice but to place her life and her baby's life in the hands of the man she had once loved, once hated, now standing at the very edge between damnation and deliverance. The surgical lights blazed overhead, cold and sharp as a blade. Amelia lay on the table, her arms restrained, her back drenched in sweat. Her heartbeat raced, her breathing ragged. The green drape stretched across her waist, hiding her abdomen from view. Only the clinking of metal and the hurried footsteps of the medical team filled the room. Prepare the spinal anesthesia. Gabriel's voice rang out calm, precise, cutting through the chaos. He was gloved, his mask covering everything but his eyes that Amelia had once loved to obsession, eyes that now made her tremble with hatred. The contractions still came in relentless waves, crashing against her like surf against stone. Amelia broke into sobs, her gasps blending with the urgent beeping of the monitor. I don't want you here, Gabriel. Please. He bent toward her, his gaze stern but shadowed with pain. I know you don't want to see me, but please trust me this once. If we don't act now, the baby will be in danger. Don't call it a baby, Amelia snapped through desperate breaths, tears spilling. You once called it a mistake, an accident. Gabriel froze for a fraction of a second. Then he inhaled deeply, his voice rough but steady. I was wrong, but there's no time left. Right now he is our son, and I will bring him into this world with everything I have. Amelia turned her face away, squeezing her eyes shut. She hated him. She hated the cruel twist of fate. But the frantic heartbeat on the monitor, the urgent warning siren, forced her into silence. She had no choice but to let him make the decision. Anesthesia complete, doctor, a nurse reported. Gabriel gave a slight nod, his eyes never leaving Amelia. He leaned closer, his voice low, meant only for her. You won't feel pain anymore. Just a little longer, and our baby will be in your arms. Amelia bit her lip, tears sliding silently. She wanted to scream at him that for 9 long months she had carried this child alone, enduring nausea, isolation, judgmental stares, and sleepless nights. But her throat closed. Only the beeping of the fetal monitor filled the silence, urging them forward. The scalpel slid coldly across her skin. Amelia flinched, her body rigid. She saw nothing, only heard Gabriel's short commands and the metallic clash of instruments. Skin incision complete. Suction. The stomach is pressing upward, hold it back. Gabriel's voice was calm, professional, and unwavering. Amelia gasped, her hands clawing at the sheets. Fear clawed at her chest, nearly stopping her breath. On the other side of the drape, Gabriel worked with icy steadiness. The man who had once been her husband was now reaching into the most sacred place to bring her child into the world. "Fetal heartbeat at 200, doctor," Linda cried, panic rising. "Faster," Gabriel snapped. "Widen the incision. Clear the fluid." The minutes dragged on like eternity. Amelia's mind filled with horrors. Her son not breathing, his tiny body limp and blue. She squeezed her eyes shut, whispering in despair, "My baby, please live. Please live for me." And then suddenly a cry pierced the air. High, clear, strong. Amelia's eyes flew open. Her heart stopped for a beat, then burst into sobs. That cry was salvation, shattering the darkness that had smothered her for months. "It's a boy!" a nurse exclaimed with joy. Gabriel stood there, holding a tiny, squalling newborn in his hands, fragile and flushed, but alive. His vision blurred behind his protective goggles, the corners of his eyes glistening with uncontainable relief. "A healthy boy. He's perfect, Amelia." Amelia stretched out her trembling hands. "Give him to me, please." For a brief moment, Gabriel hesitated. Then he gently placed the baby into Amelia's arms. The infant, swaddled in white cloth, cheeks rosy, eyes still closed, his tiny fist clenched tight. Amelia pulled him to her chest, tears streaming freely. "Theo." She whispered the name she had repeated alone for 9 months. "Welcome to the world, my love." The little boy stirred, pursed his lips, and let out another small cry. Amelia kissed his forehead, her heart both broken and overflowing. In that instant, she knew every pain had been worth it. Gabriel watched them, his gloved hands tightening into fists. He longed to reach out, to say something, but Amelia's sharp, tear-stained eyes stopped him cold. "You did it, Amelia," he said softly. "You were incredible." Amelia lifted her gaze, eyes red but blazing. "I did it. Alone." Her words sliced through the air like a blade, cutting down any hope of closeness. Gabriel bowed his head, silent. He knew she was right. Through 9 long months she had borne it all alone. The physical torment, the loneliness, the judgment, the endless nights. And he who should have stood by her had not been there. Amelia pressed her finger into Theo's palm. His tiny hand gripped hers with surprising strength. Through her tears, she laughed a laugh that was also the first smile she had worn in months. "You are everything to me. I promise, I will never leave you, no matter what happens." Under the sterile white light of the operating room, the image of the young mother holding her newborn shone brighter than anything else, erasing the chaos around them. In that moment, Amelia found both her faith restored and her strength reaffirmed. She was enough, regardless of anyone else. Gabriel stood a few steps away, silent, watching. His chest ached with pain, yet brimmed with admiration. He knew the sound of his son's first cry had not only saved Amelia, it had also given him one final chance to redeem himself. The hospital room was quiet. Only the steady beeping of the heart monitor and Theo's soft breathing filled the silence as he slept peacefully in his mother's arms. The dim golden glow of the bedside lamp wrapped the baby in a halo of warmth. Amelia leaned back against the pillows, her face pale from surgery, but her eyes radiant as she gazed at her son. Gabriel stood at the doorway for a long time, his hands clenched white at his sides. He wanted to move closer, but his steps felt like stone. At last, as though summoning all his courage, he walked in and pulled a chair beside the bed. Amelia did not look up. Her focus remained on the tiny hand clutching her finger. Her voice was hoarse. "Haven't they fired you yet?" Gabriel froze for a moment, forcing down a bitter smile. "Perhaps they have, but it doesn't matter anymore." Amelia turned to him, her gaze icy. "It's not your career that matters, it's the truth." "Why, Gabriel? Why did you abandon me and our child?" He was silent for a moment. A flicker of pain crossed his dark eyes. Then, like an old door creaking open, he began to speak. "I was 10 when it happened." Gabriel's voice was low, halting. "My mother was pregnant with my younger brother. My father, he was also an obstetrician, was happier than I'd ever seen him. He said this would be the most important delivery of his life. Amelia blinked, her hand stilled in Theo's. But Gabriel's voice broke. The birth went wrong. Severe hemorrhage. My father did everything he could, but he had to watch my mother and my baby brother die right there on the table, in his own hands. He stopped, his hand trembling, his eyes bloodshot. I'll never forget that moment. My father's scream, his collapse. From that day on, he was never the same. He drank, he blamed himself. He sank into darkness for the rest of his life. And I grew up in it, afraid, ashamed, haunted. Amelia sat frozen, the story carving into her heart like a blade. I swore to myself, Gabriel continued, that I would become the best obstetrician I could be, so no one would ever have to endure what my father did. But the day I saw that pregnancy test in your hand, I became that 10-year-old boy again. All I could hear in my head was, I'll lose her. I'll lose everything. And I ran. The room was heavy with silence. Amelia hugged Theo tighter, her eyes glistening. So you chose to abandon me. You left me to endure it alone, to fight alone. Gabriel bowed his head, his voice trembling. I know. I was a coward. I chose the easy way out, leaving instead of facing it. But Amelia, he lifted his gaze, his eyes wet as they met hers. I loved you and our child, even when my mouth denied it. I never stopped loving you. Amelia trembled, her chest aching as if it were being crushed. Half of her wanted to scream, to throw all 9 months of agony in his face. But another part of her heard the truth in his voice, saw the raw fear in his eyes. Love? Amelia let out a bitter laugh. What kind of love abandons a pregnant wife? What kind of love calls his own son a mistake? Gabriel's throat tightened. His hands gripped the edge of the chair. I can't excuse it. I was terrified. I thought if I denied it, if I kept my distance, then maybe I wouldn't have to feel that same loss again. But I was wrong, because by leaving you, I lost you anyway, even while you were still alive. Amelia was silent for a long time. Theo's steady breathing filled the air, a fragile bridge between them. She looked at her son, then at the man beside her. In her eyes swirled an ocean of emotion, anger, resentment, but also sorrow. She remembered the lonely nights, the countless times she held her belly whispering Gabriel's name. She also remembered the days when he was tender, when he would rest his hand on her shoulder and promise never to let go. You forced me to be both mother and father, Amelia whispered, her voice breaking. You made me lose my faith in love. But now when I saw you save our child, I saw again the man who once swore to protect his family. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she shook her head. I don't know what to believe anymore. Gabriel leaned back in his chair, his eyes red, but carrying the faintest glimmer of hope. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I only ask for a chance to prove myself, to show you that I can be the father he deserves, even if I was a terrible husband. Amelia gave no reply. She only lowered her head and kissed Theo's forehead, whispering, My son, I promise I will always be here. No one will ever abandon you again. Gabriel sat in silence, his hands clenched, his chest heavy with guilt. He had finally laid down his burden, confessed his bitter truth. But was it enough to heal the deep wounds in the woman before him? The room remained still, but the air had shifted, and in that silence, Amelia realized though anger still burned, her heart had begun to understand the root of Gabriel's fear, and that truth made it impossible to turn away completely. Soul Stories fam, if you're watching on another channel, come home to us at Soul Stories, where tens of thousands of listeners and sharers come together. 3 days after the birth, soft morning light streamed through the window of the recovery room. Amelia sat propped against pillows, Theo asleep in her arms. His tiny face was flushed pink, lips pressed together as if he still wasn't used to the vast new world. Each time she looked at him, Amelia's heart clenched, part joy, part wound. 6 months alone, countless tears, endless sleepless nights, all of it poured out in the moment she held Theo against her chest. A gentle knock at the door broke the quiet. Amelia looked up, and her heart sank. Gabriel. He entered, no longer in his white coat, but in a simple blue shirt and dark trousers. In his hand was a leather-bound file. Amelia frowned. "What are you doing here? Leave me alone," she said coldly. Gabriel pulled up a chair beside the bed and set the folder on the table. His eyes lingered on Theo, sleeping peacefully in his mother's arms. After a pause, he spoke. "Amelia, I didn't come to disturb you. I came because there's something I need to tell you. An opportunity." He opened the folder and laid out a stack of documents, project outlines, charts, and detailed plans. "This is a project I've been working on for 2 years," he said, his voice steady. "It's called the HOPE program. The goal is to support pregnant women in difficult situations, women like you once were." Amelia looked up, her brows knitting. "What game are you playing now?" Gabriel shook his head. "I'm serious. The HOPE program will provide temporary housing, financial assistance, free medical care, and child care for single mothers. It will also offer job training, allowing them to start over. Amelia, I want you to be the lead coordinator." The room fell still. Amelia glanced at the papers, then back at him, confusion flickering in her eyes. "Coordinator? Me?" "Yes," Gabriel replied firmly. "You have management experience, and you were once an outstanding marketing coordinator. More importantly, you understand what these women are going through. You've lived it. You'll know what they need better than anyone." Amelia let out a bitter laugh, her voice trembling. "So this is your attempt to buy me back? A good job, a high salary, a private apartment, free daycare for Theo. All in exchange for what? My forgiveness?" Gabriel froze, then slowly shook his head. "No, Amelia. This isn't about buying you. It's about doing what's right. And I believe you're the only one who can lead this." He slid the folder closer to her. "Starting salary is $85,000 a year, housing in the hospital's residential block, and Theo will have free care in the hospital daycare. You'll have your own team, your own budget. All you need to do is say yes." Amelia's breath caught. The figure was 3 times what she could ever make in Cedar Falls, more than even her old job in Chicago. A stable life, a secure future for her son. But her mind screamed in warning. Why me? There are hundreds more qualified, more experienced. Gabriel met her gaze, his voice unwavering. "Because you know what it feels like to be abandoned, to be afraid, to lose everything. You have a heart. You'll give this program a soul, not just numbers." Amelia, the HOPE program doesn't need a detached expert. It needs someone who truly understands. Amelia went still. She looked at Theo in her arms, his tiny eyelids fluttering in dreams. Memories of Cedar Falls came rushing back, job applications rejected, nights crying alone, surviving only on her aunt's kindness. If a program like this had existed, then she wouldn't have been so alone. The thought blurred her vision, but then she bit her lip, staring him down. "So this is your way of erasing your guilt? You think offering me a job will make me forget you once called our son a mistake?" Gabriel was silent. He didn't deny it. His eyes grew heavy, his voice quiet. "I can't erase what I said, but I can start from today to do what's right, not for me, for you, and for Theo." Amelia closed her eyes as tears slid down her face. She hated herself for it, but even through her bitterness, she felt the sincerity in his voice. "You're good," she whispered. "You know exactly where to strike, right where it hurts most." Gabriel gave a faint, weary smile. "I'm not as smooth as you think. I just know, if you refuse, this project won't happen. I won't look for anyone else, because I believe no one else can do it better than you." The room fell silent again. Amelia looked down at Theo, who smiled faintly in his sleep. Her chest tightened. A new chance for her, and for countless women still trapped in the dark. But to take it, she had to face the truth. The man offering it was the same man she had once loved, and once hated. Amelia lifted her head, her voice calm but cutting. "I need time to think." Gabriel nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes. "I'll wait. As long as it takes." He stood gathering some papers but leaving the main file at her bedside. Before leaving, he glanced at Theo, his voice lowering. "Our son deserves a better start than I ever gave him." Let me make this right, Amelia. The door closed softly, leaving Amelia alone in the quiet room. She stared at the thick file, her trembling hand resting on the leather cover, then looked at her sleeping son. Inside her, two voices clashed. One warning, "Don't trust him," the other whispering, "This is a chance for your child." Amelia kissed Theo's forehead and whispered, "I won't let anyone decide for me again, but I won't throw away the chance to give you a future either." And there, balanced between love and hate, a new path began to emerge, one named Hope. Amelia stood before the long mirror in the small hospital apartment, adjusting the navy blazer she had just been issued. Only a month ago, she was a single mother living with her aunt in Cedar Falls, barely daring to think about the future. And now she was about to walk into a conference room as the lead coordinator of the Hope program, the very project Gabriel had entrusted to her. She turned and looked at Theo, sleeping in the crib beside the bed. The baby stirred slightly, his lips pursed as if dreaming of something sweet. Amelia leaned down, kissed his forehead, and whispered like a vow, "For you, I will do this." The day Amelia accepted the offer, Aunt Nana had held her tightly, eyes glistening. "I knew you would go. I knew you wouldn't let your life be buried. But remember, Amelia, always keep your heart whole for Theo." The road from Cedar Falls back to Chicago stretched long, but this time Amelia no longer felt dragged backward into her old pain. Instead, she carried a fragile hope with her son, and for herself. Her new apartment in the hospital's residential block wasn't luxurious, but it was clean and modern. The hospital daycare was just downstairs, ready to care for Theo while she worked. As she walked in, breathing in the faint smell of fresh paint and sunlight pouring through the windows, Amelia felt it a true new beginning. From the very first day, Amelia was overwhelmed. The conference room was filled with unfamiliar faces: doctors, psychologists, sponsors, and healthcare staff. All of them turned to look at her, a woman who had just given birth, who had never held a senior management position before. Her first presentation was the real test. Standing in front of the screen, her heart hammered, her hands trembling as she flipped through the slides. She caught skeptical glances, even whispers. "She's just Morrison's ex-wife." Amelia drew a deep breath. Then she remembered the nights holding Theo. The moment her son let out his first cry, that strength surged within her, steadying her voice. The Hope program is not just about numbers. It's a place where women can find hope on their own. I know because I was one of them. The room fell silent. Skeptical eyes softened, replaced by attention. By the time she finished, some heads nodded, some hands clapped softly. Amelia knew it was only the first step, but a hard-won one. In the days that followed, Amelia threw herself into the work. She learned how to read financial statements, negotiate with sponsors, and handle press inquiries. At night, when Theo slept, she sat at her laptop until dawn, drafting budgets, editing reports word by word. Sometimes she was so exhausted that she would collapse at the desk. But the deeper she went, the more she realized. She was not as fragile as she once thought. Her old coordination skills returned. Her way with words persuaded even the toughest donors. Her compassion made single mothers trust her and share their stories. One afternoon, after securing new funding, a young colleague hurried after her. "Ms. Amelia, I really admire the way you speak. I think the Hope program can change this whole community." Amelia smiled, and for the first time in years, she felt her shoulders square. No longer just the abandoned single mother, but a strong woman, able to lead and create change. Then the real proof arrived. A 19-year-old girl, heavily pregnant, arrived at the Hope program. Her eyes were hollow, her clothes worn, her family gone, her boyfriend vanished. Amelia sat beside her, holding her hand. "You're not alone. Here, we'll take care of you." The girl broke down in tears, the first time in months anyone had spoken such words to her. And when her baby was born healthy, Amelia stood at the window, tears running down her face. Another case, a middle-aged woman abused by her husband and pregnant in despair, came seeking help. This time, Amelia personally escorted her to a temporary apartment, handed her the keys, and said, "Start again from here. You deserve another life." Each smile, each newborn's cry was proof. The Hope program was working, and Amelia, she was its soul. That night, Amelia stood at her apartment window holding Theo, gazing out at Chicago's glittering skyline. The city once tied to heartbreak now shimmered in new colors. She hugged her son closer and whispered, "We've come such a long way, my love, and this is only the beginning." Deep inside, Amelia knew her life had turned a page. From a lonely mother, she had become the leader of a program bringing life and hope to hundreds of women. And in that mission, she had found her confidence, her strength, and a new reason to live. On an autumn morning, golden sunlight poured through the glass windows of Chicago General Hospital. Amelia hurried down the hallway, clutching a thick file in her arms. A meeting with the sponsors was about to begin, while Theo had just been dropped off at the hospital daycare. Her heart was heavy with worry. Would her son take the bottle? Would he cry when he couldn't find her? But then as she passed the glass window of the daycare, she froze. Gabriel was holding Theo. He wore his white coat, the collar of his shirt slightly rumpled after a long night on call. One arm cradled his son close to his chest, while the other held the bottle, patiently coaxing him to drink. Theo gazed up at his father, his dark eyes so much like his own, his tiny hands pawing at his shirt. Gabriel smiled a tender smile so gentle Amelia felt as if she were looking at a different man. She stood still outside, her heart unsteady. He had kept his promise. Not once had he tried to approach her outside of work. But with Theo, he was anything but indifferent. From that day, Amelia began to notice more. When her meetings ran long, Gabriel often appeared at the daycare, quietly without fanfare. He knelt to build blocks with Theo, soothed him to sleep, or simply sat in silence, watching over his son. Once Theo spiked a low fever. Amelia rushed down only to find Gabriel already there. He sat by the crib, gently wiping sweat from Theo's forehead with a warm cloth. His eyes clouded with worry so raw it startled her. You're on call today?" she asked, hesitating. Gabriel nodded slightly. "I happened to pass by when the alert came through. I'll keep an eye on him for a few hours. Don't worry." His voice was steady, but Amelia noticed the tremor in his hands as he placed the thermometer. He was afraid just as much as she was. That night, when Theo's fever finally broke and he slept peacefully, Amelia stepped into the hall. Gabriel was still sitting on the bench, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. He didn't say a word. He just gave her a faint smile, then rose quietly and walked away. In that moment, Amelia's heart softened. The truth was undeniable. Gabriel was becoming a responsible father, and yet he remained true to his word with her. At work, he showed up only at medical meetings, birth reports, or prenatal checkups for women in the program. Whenever he had to interact with Amelia, he kept a strictly professional demeanor, never overstepping boundaries. She noticed that whenever their eyes met by accident, he was always the one to look away first. He never mentioned the past, nor did he ask for another chance. He simply stayed in the background, steady and silent as he helped the Hope program grow. That silence unsettled Amelia. Once, she had imagined him begging, explaining, pleading for forgiveness. But Gabriel did none of that. He chose instead to prove himself through actions, not words. One late evening, as Amelia finished work and went to pick up Theo, she pushed the door open and stopped short. Gabriel was on the floor, leaning against the wall, with Theo asleep on his chest. The baby's small breaths rose and fell steadily, his rosy face pressed to his father's shirt. Unaware of her presence, Gabriel softly hummed a lullaby. The melody was fragile, unsteady, but sincere. Amelia recognized it instantly, the same song he once told her his mother used to sing to him. Her vision blurred. In that moment, she saw a different Gabriel, not the cold doctor, not the selfish husband of the past, but a man doing everything he knew to make amends, to love his child the only way he could. Amelia stepped inside, forcing her voice to remain even. "Planning to sleep here, are you?" Gabriel startled, then gave a quiet laugh. "If Theo allows it." The simple reply tugged a smile from her lips, though she quickly hid it. In the weeks that followed, Amelia witnessed even more. Gabriel willingly took extra night shifts so he could stop by the daycare during the day, making sure Theo was never left unattended. He discreetly bought supplies, diapers, formula, sterilizers, but always routed them through the Hope program's logistics department, never putting his name, as if not to embarrass her. Slowly, Amelia realized he no longer lived for himself. He was learning to live as a father quietly, steadily, without show. One afternoon, after discharging a group of mothers, Linda leaned close to Amelia and whispered, "You know, I've worked with Gabriel for over 10 years. I've never seen him this dedicated, this patient. I think Theo has changed him more than any of us realizes." Amelia fell silent. Inside, the walls of anger began to crack. That night, as she cradled Theo to sleep, she whispered softly, "My love, maybe I've been seeing your father the wrong way for too long." The baby stirred, his tiny hand clutching her shirt. Amelia closed her eyes, her heart a storm. She wasn't ready to forgive, not ready to forget the months of abandonment. But she couldn't deny the truth. Gabriel had changed. He was here not as the man who once ran, but as a father learning how to love. Between distance and presence, Amelia began to realize, sometimes silent actions spoke louder than 1,000 words. The grand hall of the Chicago International Convention Center glittered under dazzling lights. Hundreds of delegates from around the world sat neatly in rows, notebooks and tablets at the ready. Across the massive screen, the words International Conference on Women's Health and Maternity Care glowed. Amelia stood backstage, fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the headset microphone. Her heart pounded wildly. Never had she imagined that she, a single mother who once fled a luxurious apartment in tears, would one day walk on stage as a keynote speaker, representing the HOPE program. "You all right?" Linda whispered, her aged but steady hand resting on Amelia's shoulder. Amelia gave a small nod. She drew a deep breath, thinking of Theo playing in the childcare center downstairs. "For him, I can do this," she told herself. The lights blazed as she stepped out. Polite applause rose from the audience. Amelia smiled calmly, her eyes shining as her voice filled the hall. When we talk about maternal health, we often speak in numbers, in statistics. But today, I want you to hear a story. She spoke of a 19-year-old girl abandoned by her family, of a middle-aged woman escaping abuse, and of herself, a woman who had once carried a pregnancy alone. She did not hide her tears when she spoke of sleepless nights filled with fear or the overwhelming joy of hearing her son's first cry. We call this project the HOPE program because sometimes what a woman needs most isn't money or medicine, but hope. Hope that she is not alone. Behind her, the screen played short videos, mothers smiling as they held their newborns, cozy apartments filled with laughter, and the words maternal mortality reduced by 15%. Prenatal care increased by 23%. The hall fell silent, then erupted into thunderous applause. Amelia bowed, tears blurring her vision, but her smile was radiant. When the Q&A ended, the organizers invited Gabriel on stage as the hospital's chief of obstetrics. He approached the podium, adjusted the microphone, and his expression was steady. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gabriel's deep, clear voice rang out, "you've just witnessed the success of a groundbreaking program. But I want to make something perfectly clear. The person behind this success is not me. It is Amelia Carter." The entire audience turned toward her. Amelia's eyes widened in shock. Gabriel went on, his voice carrying emotion. "She has given more than expertise. She has given heart, empathy. It was Amelia who transformed dry plans into living hope for hundreds of women. Without her, the HOPE program would exist only on paper." Applause thundered again. Amelia stood frozen, her throat tight. Never had she imagined Gabriel would humble himself so openly, acknowledging her in front of hundreds of witnesses. Their eyes met, and in his gaze she no longer saw the cold pride of the man who once broke her, but sincerity, humility, and a restless regret. After the session, Amelia left the hall, her heart still racing. Suddenly, Theo ran into her arms from the childcare center, his laughter echoing down the corridor. Amelia held her son tight, the world narrowing into the circle of her embrace. Gabriel approached, stopping a few steps away. He didn't rush, didn't intrude, just smiled gently at Theo. The little boy recognized his father and reached out his tiny hand. Amelia hesitated, then slowly passed Theo over. Gabriel lifted his son high, laughing when Theo tapped his chin with small fists. "Our boy is strong," he whispered, eyes alight with pure happiness. Amelia watched, her vision misting. The images clashed inside her mind. The man who once called their child a mistake, and the man now kissing his son's forehead with such tenderness. Her heart wavered. She couldn't forgive yet, but she could no longer deny the truth. Gabriel had changed, and Theo, this tiny boy, was becoming the invisible bridge between them. That evening, as they left the convention center, Amelia paused on the steps, gazing out at the sunset that stained the city red. Theo slept soundly in his stroller after a long day. Gabriel stood beside her, keeping his distance, but his presence no longer suffocated her. Amelia whispered softly, almost to herself, "Maybe this is the beginning of something new." The evening wind carried with it the echoes of the applause from that morning. Amelia knew today was not only the day she shone before the world, but also the day she realized the man who once hurt her so deeply was fighting, day by day, to be Theo's father, and perhaps an irreplaceable part of their future. Thank you for being part of Soul Stories. If you're listening on another channel, come back to the official home so you can continue our love journeys together with the Soul Stories family. That night, Chicago glowed beneath the golden haze of thousands of lights from its towering skyscrapers. Amelia stood by the apartment window, cradling Theo in her arms. The 8-month-old slept soundly, his breath steady, his tiny hand clutching the fabric of her blouse. She stroked his hair, her eyes distant. Since the international conference, her heart had not stopped trembling. Gabriel had openly acknowledged her work before the world. That was not the action of the proud man he once was, but of someone willing to bow to the truth for the woman he loved and the child he cherished. A soft knock echoed on the door. Turning, Amelia saw Gabriel standing at the threshold, still in his dark shirt, his tie loosened after a long day. He didn't step inside right away. He waited silently for her permission. Amelia gave a slight nod. Gabriel approached, stopping at a respectful distance so she wouldn't feel cornered. His eyes softened as he gazed at Theo in her arms, so tender that Amelia had to turn away to hide the tear welling in her eye. "Amelia," he said softly, as though afraid to wake the baby, "I've never stopped regretting the months you had to endure alone. I know no words can erase that, but if you would give me the chance, I want to share the burden with you." Amelia drew a deep breath, meeting his gaze. Her voice trembled, yet remained firm. "Gabriel, all this time I've only known how to run. I avoided you, avoided the memories. But maybe it's time to stop running. Let's figure out together how to become the family Theo deserves." Gabriel froze. His eyes widened, then lit with hope. He reached out, hesitating as though fearing rejection. But Amelia didn't pull back. They sat down on the sofa, Theo still asleep in her arms. Amelia laid him gently on a pillow, then turned back to Gabriel. "I can't forgive everything yet. That pain, it may linger for a long time," she admitted, her voice thick. Gabriel nodded, offering no defense. "I don't expect forgiveness right away. All I ask is the chance to prove, day by day, little by little, that I can be a worthy father, and if possible, someday, a worthy husband." Amelia gave a wistful smile. "You're still as greedy as ever." "No," he shook his head, eyes bright. "Back then, I was greedy for myself. Now I only want to be greedy for us." Amelia's heart trembled. She wasn't ready to speak of love again, but a small door within her had cracked open. Theo stirred suddenly, letting out a faint cry. Amelia quickly picked him up, soothing him. Gabriel stepped closer, extending his arms gently. "Let me try." She hesitated for a moment, then handed Theo over. Gabriel cradled him, rocking slowly. His voice hummed a lullaby, clumsy but warm. Theo quieted, tiny fingers clutching his father's shirt. Amelia stood watching, her chest tightening. The scene was so ordinary, yet to her, it was as precious as a miracle. "He's already forgiven you," she whispered, smiling faintly through tears. Gabriel looked up, his eyes shimmering. "All I need is for you to give me the same chance he just did." Moments later, the three of them stood together by the large window. Chicago stretched out below, lights twinkling like 1,000 stars. Gabriel held Theo, while Amelia stood beside him, her hand brushing his. They stayed silent, but the silence no longer felt like distance. It was harmony. Amelia felt his breath beside her, his warmth seeping across, and she heard Theo's soft little laugh in his sleep. In that moment, Amelia no longer saw herself as the abandoned woman, but as a mother, as a woman stepping into a new journey beside the man she had once loved, once hated, and now was willing to give another chance. The city lights reflected against the glass, casting the silhouette of three figures, a small but radiant family. Amelia whispered, uncertain if she was speaking to her son or to herself. Maybe this family can begin again. Gabriel turned toward her, his eyes glowing with faith and gratitude. He nodded gently, as if vowing with his whole heart that he would never lose them again. Outside the window, dawn began to break, painting the horizon with the soft pink of a new beginning.